All right, my friends, I hope you had a great weekend. I definitely had a good weekend. It was a good Lord's Day and all that kind of thing. We had fires every night. It was great. It was a great time. Yesterday morning, I went fishing, and I kind of told myself that this might be the last time I go fishing before ice fishing season, which is probably not till January. So I'm talking this could be my last fishing trip of the year. And the reason being is because I'd been struggling. I haven't been finding any fish. I've caught a few little guys, here and there, but nothing significant in a couple of weeks even. And probably since I got back from the conference, actually. Anyway, so I went to one spot, nothing. And I was getting very frustrated. I went to another spot that I've had a lot of success at, and still nothing up until the last cast. And I mean it. I was like, all right, this has to be my last cast. I got to go home. Lord, please give me a fish. And I said it out loud. And again, I'm not above praying for fish. I threw out the green pumpkin craw. And wow, I felt a huge bite. I knew it was a good one right away. I was like, please don't get off. Please don't get off. And it didn't. I got him. And he was just under 2 pounds and just an awesome fight. He jumped a few times. It was just so cool. So cool. On the last cast special, if you can believe it. But anyway, I don't know if that'll be my last trip. I think it still will be because I've just been doing so poorly. But at least the fish are still out there and they're still biting. So I might need to take advantage while I have the opportunity. So I wanted to talk today about one of the issues with woke church that I've talked about before, but really, if you love people that are involved in this woke church, social justice movement, that's why you have to oppose it so strongly. Because this, it doesn't just hurt people in theory. It hurts people's souls in reality, but not just their souls, in eternity at some point, which it definitely could affect that, but also in the here and now, in how they engage in the world. This is a tweet. This is on Protestia. They still follow Kyle Howard, which I appreciate because I don't have the stomach for it anymore. This guy is absolutely ridiculous. But Kyle Howard, the trauma queen himself, he had this thread about how if you show up on time, if you're invited to a black person's house for a party, right, and the invitation says the party is from 4 to 7, right? If you show up at 4. You're actually being rude, is what he said, because, black people are going to be so stressed out because they're running behind, they're just getting everything ready. They're almost ready, but not quite. And then you being there while they're trying to get ready is going to stress them out because, you see, black people don't tell time the way white people do. This is Kyle's position, right? But black people don't tell time the way white people do. So, for a black person, if you're on time, you're actually early. Like not just early though, you're actually rudely early. So if somebody tells you that their party starts at 4, then if you're a white person, as a white person, you need to ask them, okay, well, what time should I get there? Right? Even though that doesn't make any sense since the party's at 4, you have to ask them, what time should I get there? Just so you're not rude, because that's secretly a form of whiteness to come on time, right? And to insist that if somebody says their party starts at 4, that you show up at 4, that's an example of racism, right? And this is all very stupid, obviously, right? And I remember, I'll never forget this. When I was first in the business world, I remember there was this one guy who, he was good, but he was always a little rough around the edges, right? He was a hard worker, and he would make a ton of phone calls, and he would, put a lot of effort in, but he needed a lot of coaching. Things that seemed obvious to me weren't that obvious to him. And it was just a thing. He just needed a little extra help. And I'll never forget, he had a candidate show up for an interview late twice in a row, 2 in a row, and the same customer, the same, interview, all that kind of stuff. He showed up late 2 in a row, 2 different candidates, right? So one candidate for the same job showed up late to the interview twice. And the second time, the person who was working with him on the role said, how is this happening? And my coworker said, oh, it's because it's hard to find this building because like it's like kind of tucked in between two roads and the door isn't immediately obvious and stuff like that. And so it's just a little hard to find, right? Like, and I remember thinking, and this person didn't say anything to him. Like he was like, okay, fine, whatever. And the person didn't say anything to him. And I was like thinking to myself, so if you knew the building was hard to find, why didn't you tell him to show up a little earlier, or why didn't you explain to him how to find the building? And I asked him, I said, did you tell him about this? And he goes, no, I just gave him the address. And I'm like, well, like if you already know that it's hard to find, then maybe you should have told him, like, maybe give yourself a little extra time because it's hard to find. And he goes, yeah, you know what, I should have done that, and it's like, you got to change if you know that there's something that's going to trip somebody up, don't blame them. Change your behavior, change what you tell them, and everything will be fine. So Kyle Howard here is saying, it's like whiteness if you show up on time. Well, how about this, Kyle? If this is such a problem for you, if you're so stressed out, why not just say to the person up front, look, the party's from 4 to 7, but I'm expecting people to show up a little later. Like, don't wait for them to ask. Why would you do that? If this is really traumatic and stressful, Kyle, change your behavior. You see, this is the problem. Like, and this is a stupid thing, right? This is small and stupid, right? If black people want to be stressed out because they told someone 4 o'clock instead of what they really meant was 4:45 or 5 o'clock, if that's how black people want to operate, let them stress themselves out. That's fine. It's just a stupid thing. It's a party, right? This, by the way, this isn't how black people want to operate. In any case, but the thing is, if this really is such a problem, change your behavior. You can't change what other people do. Change what you do. And in this situation, it's like, this is a small thing, but this is the whole social justice woke movement. It's all about, it's everybody else's problem. You're always pointing the finger at everybody else instead of looking at yourself and thinking, how can I adjust in order to have a more successful life or a more joyful life or a less stressful life? Like, if these things are actually important to you, then you should look at yourself and say, how can I take some ownership of this, right? And obviously, not every situation you're able to do that, but at the end of the day, like, that's where the lion's share of your time should be focused on the person you can change the most, yourself, right? It's not everybody else's problem. It's your problem. Deal with it, Kyle. But in any case, I did want to read something else, because this whole thing about being on time is whiteness, is white supremacy. This is not, Kyle didn't invent this. This is something that a lot of these psychopaths think. And let me just read to you. This is a message I got from someone. And this person he calls themselves it's a transsexual, so white man, but he calls himself a she/they. So there's that. And also one of these neurodivergents, which basically means that, he can be as rude or as weird as possible, and you can't judge him for it. You can't tell him not to do that. Like, he basically like neurodivergent is basically used to basically get away with antisocial behavior, right? That's how it's used. In any case, I want you to read this, because this is, again, a white man who pretends to be a woman. This is what he says about being on time. This is really funny, and I think I want to explain something at the end, because this is one of the funniest developments in the woke church and the woke movement in general imaginable. Basically, what they're doing is every good character trait that leads to success, they're saying is white supremacy. I kid you not. All good character traits are now white supremacy. Here we go. He says this: a great way to find out if a new business contact is harboring covert white supremacy in themselves or their organization is to say no to them about a timeline they are very much invested in keeping. The capture and commodification of time into the oppressive force it's been molded into over the modern era is an essential pillar of capitalism and other neo-colonial methods of resource and wealth extraction. I live on neurodivergent queer burnout time as only a late Gen Xer, elder, millennial, gifted kid that grew up in the 80s can. If you are late to meet me, cool. I love hanging out with myself. If you love to cancel plans, if you have to cancel plans at the last minute because putting on socks and shoes will melt you down, wow, can I bring you some tea and soup or anything else that you need to soothe? I can leave them on the stoop if having to see anyone right now is too much. Do you need a sliding scale mental health or life coaching or pro bono career coaching placement service? DM me anytime. We're discussing a business partnership and how we will work together. And you get back to me intermittently because you're working 60-hour weeks at your main job while trying to fund a passion project startup to escape that hell. But if I'm not available to speak with you on the weekend because I'm helping a friend name 5 things they can see, 4 things they can touch, well, you're not going to pass the velvet ropes at the front door of my life. The bouncer, she's much too fierce for that. That last paragraph, I don't even know what it's supposed to mean. But anyway, so again, apparently deadlines and timelines and punctuality, all these things are actually racist. They're all white supremacy, right? It's white people trying to mold people, according to their whiteness and things like that. And it's just so funny because we're being told like all these things that are actually positive things, they're very good things. They're actually whiteness, right? It's just like it's such a weird flex. You know what I mean? Like, do these people really want to make all of the good character traits that you could possibly have and turn it into whiteness, and then all of the bad character traits turn it into, blacks and people of color? That's what they're doing. Like a black. Do you really want to have a situation where blacks can't tell time but whites can, and somehow that's bad? It's just ridiculous. And the thing is, when you apply this to real life, it doesn't work, obviously, right? Because of course, you can have an organization or a business that constantly creates this like sense of urgency that's really kind of artificial. Like video game companies get accused of this all the time, where it's constantly crunch time, right? They're constantly working 10 hours a day, 7 days a week because that deadline is coming. We got to get the new Madden out, even though Madden's the same every year. We got to work, round the clock. And so video games, companies get criticized for this all the time. And of course, that's unhealthy. That's not healthy. God says 6 days you shall work, not 7. Although he doesn't say 5 either, which is something to consider. In any case, So yeah, there's obviously a way to abuse sort of that sense of urgency, but the sense of urgency is actually a very, very good thing. If any of you guys work in logistics, like that sometimes like these plants or factories, they'll overpay to get a load delivered to them immediately because they've got a timeline to keep, right? And they'll pay you an exorbitant amount of money because they're running out of a certain material. And here's the reality, guys. This is the reason why they're willing to do it. Because if the plant shuts down because they don't have a certain raw material, they're losing millions of dollars per minute. It's not like a small deal. And the thing is, lest you think I'm just talking about greed and wealth and trying to make as much money as possible, you always got to think at the unseen as well, right? Because the money and what you lose money-wise and what you're producing, that's what's seen, right? But the unseen is what's down the line. And a lot of these factories, like let's take a food factory, for example. If a food factory is down for months or for hours at a time because they don't have enough, raw materials because because I guess Kyle Howard was the one, getting the shipment over to them, and he doesn't keep white people. I don't keep white people time. Like they're going to lose, not only going to lose millions of dollars a minute, but also people don't get fed down the line. This is the whole thing with the COVID thing, right? People were saying, oh, you just want your portfolio to go up, so that's why you don't care about grandma and you don't want to shut down the economy. And at the time I was like, yeah, but don't be an idiot, right? Don't be an idiot, because that's what's seen, right? You're talking about the money now. But what I'm looking at are all the people, around the world that are going to starve or freeze to death because these factories close down for a certain amount of time, right? Like that's the thing. Like the money incentives that company has actually end up serving the community a lot of the time. Not all the time, right? Because there's illegitimate businesses as well, but a lot of the time they do. And so it's just like this. It's just ridiculous, right? Everything about the woke church stuff is ridiculous. But this thing about timekeeping and how if you actually keep time the right way, or if you have a deadline and you honor it, like that's somehow white supremacy. It's just so funny. There's so many examples of this where our enemies are assigning a negative like thrust to positive character traits, right? Positive character traits. And they say, well, that's whiteness. This is a white person. That's whiteness. And it's like all this stuff is good, right? And then they wonder why, like, we laugh when they call us racist, right? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, what are you trying to say? That's like it's almost to the point where if somebody calls you a racist, that's like the nicest thing anyone's ever said to you. I think we're already there. I think the new one right now is anti-Semitic, right? Like the new one, if you're not getting called anti-Semitic regularly, you got to take a good look in the mirror because being called an anti-Semite right now is like the nicest thing anyone could ever say to you. Oh man. But yeah, Kyle Howard. Yeah, I appreciate Protestia. They're doing the Lord's work. I think like every time Protestia writes something about Kyle Howard, I remember Kyle Howard for the first time since the last time Protestia wrote something about them because I just forget he exists all the time. In any case, I hope you found this people. I hope you found this video helpful. And by the way, white people, I love you guys. You guys are great. Don't listen to these. Don't listen to listen. I know it's hard to shut out the world constantly. They're constantly telling you you're bad, you're evil, you're this and that. You're evil because you keep your deadlines. You show up on time for parties. You're evil. But don't listen to them, man. I love you. Lots of us love you. Lots of us black and people of color. We love you, white people. We do. God bless. Creating a persistent sense of emergency, then using that emergency to keep everyone on the team in an emotionally heightened state is a white supremacist tactic deployed almost everywhere to one degree or another. The best and only real countermeasure to this type of manipulation and bullying is to say no to it regularly. Then strap in and breathe because you are in for the ride of your life. Welcome to recovery from people pleasing. Welcome to the beginnings of psychological safety. You're meeting yourself in your wholeness now, and I'm excited for you. We live in one of those impossible times in history where the old world has been in decline for as long as anyone under 50 has been alive. Over our lifetimes, we've all felt this great reckoning coming, but somehow that day never arrives. The greatest duality, the one that will cap off this era of ever-increasing polarization and the primacy of the story of us versus them, is the emerging synthesis of old and new ways of seeing objective realities grinding into each other like the social equivalent of tectonic plates. Every day, more and more folks wake up to the fact that if all experience happens between the poles of everything and nothing, everywhere and nowhere, perpetual and never, then it must be unity that they seek. Opposite ends are still unified parts of the same whole, fundamental and indivisible. There is no separation. Culture that integrates this fact will thrive at the peril of culture that won't. Not choosing is acceptance of the status quo. The ravings of a madman. It really is. The ravings of a pure, unadulterated, grade A lunatic, in my opinion, allegedly.